So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. You didn't send me a bio, so we're just going to wing it. I'm
Sure.
Regina Edwards. Most of you know me as the founder of Lawyer on the Beach Facebook group, which is a community of lawyers that are trying to use tech to help with their practices and processes in those practices, and then hopefully work on life work balance. So Jordan's been a member of the group for quite some time. He is a personal injury attorney, and I believe your wife is also a personal injury attorney and works in the firm with
She's
you as
the
well.
real lawyer.
They both real lawyers. They have a 4-year-old son.
He just turned 6,
Six. Oh, well.
but
They have a
like just
six-year-old
6.
son
So
who they travel extensively with. So he's owned several businesses. He was the founder of Legalese Marketing, and now I believe your Driven Law is your new company.
Driven
That
Law.
also,
Well, I'm sorry. We
what's
rebranded the
the name
law
of your new
firm to Driven
company?
Law. Carpe Diem Consulting.
Oh, okay, Carpe Diem Consulting. But you help other lawyers kind of, run firms themselves and hopefully learn from you. So ideally, Jordan likes to work about 3 days a week. And I remember maybe 2 years ago, you and your wife and your son took like this epic road trip across America that lasted months and months and months, and still the practice kept going and kept making money. So you've now written a book and you just published a book. And so we're here to talk about some of the concepts in your book of how you're able to make that happen and how you can help other people make that happen. And if, other people don't want to go on a year-long road trip, that's fine. But really, it's more about the concepts of living the life that you want and having freedom for you to do the things that you want to do. So, so what made you decide to write this book? What was the impetus for it?
It's a really good question. I was miserable as a lawyer when I started writing the book, and I think part of it was just like, can I cathartically write my way out of it? So originally, I think the book started in like 2017, 2018. And then eventually things got better. So I think that made for a much better book than it would have been had I released it at that point. But finally, like I needed to come up with a date. And I think, coming back from the 13-month cross-country road trip became the easy thing of like, all right, I'm not dead. So the story is going to continue writing itself. But like, let me finish this book here and actually get it out in the world.
All right. So a lot of times people have questions about how. They always want to know how. So obviously you get into that in your book. And what I like about it is you kind of sort of set the groundwork. So I think what people need to understand is it's a little bit difficult to kind of just sort of jump off a cliff and have this sort of, nomadic life without having the groundwork in place. So you talk about sort of the building blocks to how you get this kind of practice, which are referrals, making sure that you are marketing to your ideal client, having your systems in place. All of that is kind of necessary to even begin this journey. Is that kind of how you see it?
Completely. Yeah, I think like, look, if anybody here started their firm with a ton of cash, then you might be able to skip referrals at the beginning and go straight to more digital. But otherwise, I think you've got to build those relationships and then you can keep some of them going. You can also then, have more consistent cash flow to put towards a digital strategy and whatnot. But I think that's where, the 90% of lawyers that start a law firm with zero money or one credit card to max out, I think that's how you have to do it.
And you talk about a lot about niche marketing and then finding your ideal client, which can be difficult, especially when people are just starting their own firms. They're like, how am I going to pay the bills? And sometimes they feel like, well, my ideal client is one who can pay me. So, how do you get people out of that sort of scarcity mindset into it really is going to help your practice overall to drill down into the type of client that you want to represent and getting that client?
That's a great question. I mean, look, I've got some specific questions in the book. If you already have clients, I think like what clients did you actually like, and then sort of work backwards from there. But if you're truly starting from nothing, I think the biggest thing for me is like think about who you remember. And like you're not going to remember the PI firm that helps anybody who drives a car, who gets hit by a car, whatever. There's not an engaging story there. But that firm that's geared towards teachers and blue collar professionals and or people who always get hit by Amazon trucks or UPS or whatever, you can tell a better story, which is what stays in people's minds. And what ends up happening is I think we initially think that by making that story more specific, people are going to weed us out. But what ends up happening is you get all these calls. They're like, hey, I know you normally work with so and so, but could you do me a favor and help this person who's like one step away from that exactly right ideal client because they were memorable, because they remembered you, because they thought of you. And so the more specific you get, I don't think you lose cases. I think you plant that flag in somebody's brain for them to actually think about you.
And what I did, and I posted it, oh goodness. Let me see if I can find the link to it. So what I tried to do is kind of quantify what my ideal client was. I had a client kind of politely say to me years and years ago, he felt like we weren't really giving him enough attention. And he felt like it was because he wasn't really complaining enough. And he says, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And he was absolutely right. And I think of it as a sort of 80-20 thing, Pareto principle. If you're not careful, you will spend 80% of your time on 20% of the clients that you don't even like. And so he was absolutely right. So what I went through and did is I kind of quantified what made an ideal client. So I put a link to um, my post on that, and I just did a spreadsheet, and I had a whole bunch of different categories. And of course, you can have whatever categories you like um, in your matrix, and I just kind of quantified it. What makes a great client? I do family law, so it's kind of a little bit different than other practice areas like personal injury. I actually need people to be a little bit patient. It's a little bit different than personal injury. Like they're hurting, they really need things done right away. Versus divorce, I mean, you've hated this person for 10 years, so like you're gonna have to calm down a little bit. Kind of their willingness to get along with the other party, just things that over the course of my career I really felt um, made for an easier attorney-client relationship. And I just graded them, and anyone below 3.0 got fired. And I did it really politely, but I did it. Everyone below 3.0 got fired. And since then, I haven't really done it mathematically since, but I kind of keep those factors in my mind. And my staff is trained to keep that in mind during intake. So if someone's really rude and abrasive on the initial call, we don't even engage with that person. Is there a slight chance they can be rehabilitated and be a good client? Sure, but there's a better chance they won't. They'll make your life miserable. And you really want to make sure that you're spending a good portion of your time on the good clients that aren't giving you trouble. So that's just something to look at later. Something else that you mentioned in your book, which I use this quote all the time too, which is by Maya Angelou is oh goodness, I always mess it up when I try to quote it. It's people do not remember what you do for them, they remember how you made them feel,
They don't
something
remember
like
what you
that.
said. They remember how you made them feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, so when you're talking about cultivating referrals and a client base that's going to refer you over and over again, that is the key. Um, especially since we're in a service industry. So, most people, and if you've done, your screening correctly, most clients are going to be aware that you're not going to win every case, but they want to know that you cared and they want to know that you did the best for them. So just kind of baking that into your practice too is going to help with this referral, based system that's going to help you along the way.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is I think we look at this from the standpoint of like, who do I want to work with? Or we look at it from the standpoint of why should people hire me? But like combine those two things. Like
Right.
the reason that you like them should be the reason that they like you or want to choose you or whatever word you want to use. And like that's where it becomes really awesome because you are being yourself for people that want you to be you.
Right. And it's not wrong to have honest conversations. Sometimes I get referrals and I know that that person is not the right person for me. Just in family, I've decided for my own sanity that I cannot and will not handle cases where there's allegations of parental alienation or sexual abuse to children. I can't. I can't. So I will refer those cases elsewhere. So it's okay to tell your referral sources, thanks for thinking of me. This isn't, my particular area, but here's someone else that possibly can do it. But if you've got to be honest with yourself about what cases you really excel at, because it's going to be able to help you help your clients in the future. If it's not a case where every time you look at it or every time you look at the file or you see an email come up, you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this case. That's not going to help you.
Yeah, one of the things that we've done in the past is as an extra holiday present to the staff, sometimes we'll fire that client, It's a great way to cap off the year.
Yeah, I think someone mentioned in the group, I don't remember who it was. It was they offered to their staff, yeah, pick somebody that we get to fire. So when people think that it's callous and all of that, but it's not wrong to kind of evaluate, where you are in your client relationship. I just think of it as a regular relationship. What do you do when you're in a relationship with someone and it's not working? We're not in a hostage situation here, folks. So you can always exit if it's not benefiting you, because in the long run, if you kind of are in this sort of hostile, antagonistic relationship, and that just progresses, no matter how well you do for the client, sometimes they're going to have something to complain about it. And I definitely remember times where, against my better judgment, I stayed in a case and someone just could not be pleased. I mean, when someone gets a $50,000 a month alimony award and complains it's not enough for their Louis Vuitton purse monthly budget, there's nothing I can do for that person. I should have tapped out earlier on. So, all right, who would,
Hypothetically.
yes. So you also mentioned something in your book about looking at your client journey and then kind of having to adapt your practice of whether or not you have a reactive practice or a proactive practice. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that's why I love family law, not as the lawyer, God bless you. But in family law, you can do both. So like I always say, are your clients reacting to something or are your clients working proactively? So if they were arrested, if they were in a car accident, if divorce got filed on them, that is reactive law. If they are wanting to adopt somebody, if they're thinking about filing for divorce, if they need their estate plan, that's proactive. And it completely changes the way that you market, because the reactive person, John Morgan talks about this. For PI, we're plumbers. Somebody's calling, and the first person who answers the call who sounds even remotely okay is getting the case because the house is filling up with water. Whereas, for family law, like you mentioned, that person having, 10 years of dislike for the other person, hatred, out of whatever it's put towards, can take a little bit more time to find the right attorney. And so you really kind of change your intake process depending upon how things are going, because you need to address that client's concerns either quicker, or you need to sell yourself to them more because they have the time to get more options. There's not a right or wrong. It's really dependent upon what your client's looking for.
Right. And that's especially true if you're following up with drip campaigns. If you're in estate planning, I feel like we all know that we're not going to make it out of here alive, but for some reason, it's just never, people just don't really kind of have the emphasis on exigency in estate planning as they do in a divorce. When they decide they want a divorce, they want a divorce. Versus estate planning, I feel like those clients need a little bit longer of a journey. So he does talk about that a little bit in the book, and you can put sort of things into your campaign and make sure that you're giving them informative things that they can look back on, because sometimes it does take a while, and sometimes it takes something else, an unexpected death of a friend, to make them think, oh, this is probably something that I should sort of get on. So it's just a little bit longer of a process than PI criminal. That is a shortened time frame, and you have to have someone on the phone that sounds like they know what they're doing and they sound like they care. And at that point, it's hard unless you really don't know what you're doing, to not sort of nail down that client, because they need their problem fixed and they need it now. So it's a little bit of a different process that you kind of have to explore. So in terms of how did you kind of get to where you are now, where you are only working a few days a week?
So I wish I remembered the date, because I always tell this story and I don't remember when it happened. But my kid was born in March 2nd of 2018. So like mid 2017, my wife told me she was pregnant with our kid, wrote it on a hot sauce bottle because I love hot sauce. So she's like, "You're the hot daddy," or something like that. Um, and thank God I was happy. Like, we were trying for a year. I was super happy. And then like 15 seconds later, I was like, holy shit, how are we going to do this? Like, we are $200,000 in debt. We are working 80 hours a week. We are both miserable. Like, someone's going to hand us a baby. So that was the beginning of, I don't want to call it rock bottom, but that was the beginning of the change in my journey. So into 2018, I cut $100,000 a year marketing budget. My firm made $5,000 less. My kid was born. We didn't put him in daycare. I was like, at the very least, I'll spend time with my kid, and whatever happens with the firm happens. And so that's probably that's what forced me into the 3 days. And then I realized by me not being there, it really made me build the systems and train up everybody else and figure out what we want and like really be intentional about these things. And then I went back from the road trip to I stayed at 2 days a week after we were driving so much. and I was bored. So that's why I got bought out of legalese. So I launched the coaching company to add a third day, because 2 days was like, I could feel my brain rotting. And the weird part is people are like, oh, then just work more on your firm. Like, you don't understand. When I work on my firm, I break things and no one's happy, including myself. So like 3 days a week gives me enough time to do quarterly planning and the employee evaluations and the marketing and, a bunch of the networking stuff without giving me so much time to be like, we need to change this comma to a semicolon. This needs to be an M dash, not an N dash. Like, really, come on, people. Has anybody read these, email campaigns or whatever it is? Like, it made me such a crazy micromanager, and that was not good for anybody.
Right. That was the thing I never figured out when I owned a big firm, is kind of how to get people to kind of be more autonomous. I never figured it out, and I, at this point, don't care to. So I have a small firm and I'm happy with it. But so yes, there's tips in the books about that. And also I wanted to talk about
So can I speak to that for a
Oh,
second?
sure.
So
Yeah.
this is not in the book, but this is in my newsletter that will come out in an hour and 12 minutes. It's like literally this week, going through like the 5 different, like, what do you want your employees to do when they find a problem? Do you want them to come to you immediately? Do you want them to come up with solutions? Do you want them to, crowdsource it? Like, what do you want them to do? Because I think we lose sight of that. It's easy to say like, oh, I want my employees to be proactive, but then you might send somebody down a 4-hour rabbit hole that you could resolve in 10 seconds. And so like, I kind of walk through those different examples with the balance, because I'm right there with you. Like, you want to empower you want to empower the problem to get solved as efficiently as possible. Sometimes that's proactive on the employees. Sometimes that's groupthink. Sometimes it's coming to you, but like, the more you know, or the more they know when to do those things, the better.
Right. So one book that kind of changed my life in terms of deciding to go remote back in 2015, when people thought I was insane to move out to Arizona and keep running a Georgia practice, was Tim Ferriss, The 4 Hour Work Week. So like 40% of the book is insane. So, and it's not going to be relevant to what you have to do, but you can skip those chapters about, marketing t-shirts on Amazon. But some of the overall concepts really are kind of, mind blowing in terms of when to check your email, when to delegate your email, and specific steps of how to empower your team to make decisions, because he realized he was the cog in the wheel. And once you realize you're the cog in the wheel, you have to figure out how to get yourself out of it, in a way that obviously is not malpracticey. So there's certain, guidelines and guardrails that you can put in place to your team and say, if this fits into this category, you don't need to contact me. You need to contact this person, or you need to do this, or you need to refer to this sort of outline that I have. So there's ways you can kind of empower your staff to make decisions without you, where you're not constantly sort of plugging up the pipeline, because obviously we have other things to do. And if our staff is constantly waiting on us for approval for everything, it really is going to make your firm a lot less efficient. And if you're thinking about growing, it cannot be scalable if you are the cog in the wheel.
Well, and the point that he makes exactly to that specifically, he talks about like, I think in the book, it's, if you can solve this for like $100 or less, just do it and don't even ask
Right.
me. And I think he
Yep.
moved the number up later. So like, if you're billing $400 an hour and there's a problem at the office that a $10 an hour employee can resolve for $390, it's still cheaper than you jumping into that problem for an hour.
Right.
So like, there's ways to, I think that becomes one of the most important guide rails, guidelines, limits. There's a certain point where it's not worth you getting involved in the solution.
So in terms of your kind of, how do you run a firm when you are working 3 days a week? Do you have set up meetings, or do you just kind of pop in and out, or how do you structure it?
Yeah, so I am immensely structured. Like, I can tell you, yeah, I work Mondays and Thursdays, basically 8:30 to 5. And then I work Tuesdays until 2 when I pick up my son, or sorry, Wednesdays until 2. And so I can tell you that on a normal 4-week cycle, I have 14 open hours in that time frame for whatever else comes up. Otherwise, things are scheduled. The biggest thing that we do our version of the Traction Level 10 meeting on Mondays. We go from 9:30 to usually 10:30. It's booked until 11. Everybody reports their major KPIs. We look at wherever people are on track. And then when they're not, we talk through the issues that are coming up there. And then the best part about it is at the end, we rate the meeting. It's something that Traction pushes that I'm a huge fan of, because it is amazing to me the feedback you will get about how to make the meeting better, or how to get better, or how to get better feedback from those standpoints. I think just doing that has made my team do that with each other on everything in a way that goes back to your autonomy level. And that keeps me 85% up on where the firm needs to be at any point. And then I've got time with everybody to go in and coach them individually. And we've got, our version of employee evaluations, which really is like, how have you grown over the last 3 months? How do you want to grow over the next 3 months? How can you impact your one KPI? And those have been great. And that fills in usually the other, 15%.
Awesome. So something you kind of casually mentioned earlier and really kind of got my attention in the book also is you said when you were trying to, save up money, you cut your $100,000 a year marketing budget and you only earned $5,000 less. So I know a lot of people are worried about, starting a firm, you really need to spend a whole bunch on marketing. How is it you were able to cut your marketing budget and still not make significantly less money?
So look, the marketing wasn't that bad. I was not spending 130,000 to only make 5, but I was able to organically grow my firm. And so the problem with traditional digital marketing is that there's this whole other component of it that you normally don't get from the same person. It's a sales process. If it's a referral, if somebody says Regina is the best attorney ever in town, you have to hire her, it doesn't really matter what that intake process looks like to the person that believes that statement. But if somebody goes to Google and sees, Amy's ad for estate planning and clicks on it, that's all they know. And so that requires a much more consistent sales process, whether it's through, I think you and I both use Lawmatics, whether it's through a program, whether it's a really great intake person that runs it, that costs money. And so like this, you have this digital marketing strategy without a good sales strategy is totally where I was. Like we were spending a ton of that money. I didn't have Lawmatics at the time. I had an Excel spreadsheet. I didn't have consistent emails. Like I was missing this whole other chunk of it. And so the referrals kept coming. They were great. They loved it. So-and-so said Jordan's the best. I represented their friend, that we handled this case for their wife, whatever it was. It didn't matter on that part. And so like we lost a lot of leads that we wouldn't have closed anyway, because I didn't have this whole other thing in place. And so like it becomes that situation where you can focus on the lead gen of networking and then spend some of that money on digital marketing and spend some of that money on a sales process or an intake person. But like you have to have the money to be able to do those things.
Right. And I think sometimes a lot of people worry first about marketing without having the foundation in place. Well, how are you going to process all those leads? You don't have someone, because PI criminal, you have to have someone to answer the phone and you have to have a fee agreement sent out to them pretty much yesterday. Because those people are just going to hang up and call somebody else. It's a little bit different. I intentionally slow down my intake process because the person that calls and says, I want a divorce today and I want to talk to an attorney right now, that is not my ideal client. So I'm okay with slowing it down. So you definitely have to look at, what your practice area is and then building an intake system around that. So I do love Lawmatics. They don't pay me to say it. I've used a lot of different intake systems, but the best part about it is how much time is saved. I don't have a receptionist. I haven't had a receptionist in years. So I have an answering service that gets the basic information and puts it into a funnel. And then as long as you have someone getting the information and putting it into a funnel and something automatically happens, that's your best bet. And in my case, once they're the answering service knows the family law case, they immediately go into a funnel. They get a text message with information. They get an email with information about what to expect, next steps. I give them homework. If you keep people busy doing homework, that'll usually stop them from calling somebody else saying, hey, in any family law case, you need to do this, this, and this. Same thing with PI. If you've been in an accident, you need to get, I don't know, police report or something. Whatever. I'm sure there's a list of things.
Helpful.
Yeah, a list of things that they need to do. So if you have an intake system that immediately can provide them information and resources, things to do, how you work with their firm, it's going to help because most firms are not going to have an attorney available to speak to them right away. So there is going to be a gap between the initial call and them actually talking to an attorney. And how you fill that gap, I think, is going to really depend on how many clients you lose in the meantime. Because if it's just people are just saying, well, an attorney will give you a call back in a couple of days. Yeah, that person's pretty much gone. Unless it's a really, really warm referral, like Jordan's the best PI attorney. So you have to make sure you've got something in place where they're getting information from you and they feel like they are already part of working with your firm before they even sign the fee agreement, just to kind of keep them engaged.
And I would go a step farther than that. I would make sure you have fulfillment down. So like the actual legal services, make sure you can do a great job on one case, let alone 10, let alone 100. And then you can go into and then from there, build that sales process, and from there, build the marketing. So like create your funnel upside down. I don't know. Right
Right.
side up,
So yeah,
whatever.
and all those
Anyway.
pieces are definitely needed, because if you get a whole bunch of clients and you really don't know how to handle the cases, you're gonna have a problem going forward. So it's definitely building blocks. And I've been a lawyer for 23 years, I think. So it's definitely a learning process, and I've made a ton of mistakes. Thankfully, none of those mistakes were super malpracticing, and I got to learn from them. But usually I found that, when you make a mistake or if a client has a complaint, I am pretty open to hearing what anyone has to say and then changing my processes based on this. Because it is about how you make people feel. So telling clients you're wrong is usually not the way to go. So usually I say, well, I can understand why you feel this way. Here's maybe what I can do to help you and other clients in the future not necessarily feel that way. So Javella is asking, can you elaborate more on Lawmatics and how it helps you the most? We'll talk a little bit about the intake process, and I'll also send you a link to, I did a couple of Lawmatics webinars on the Laura on the Beach YouTube channel that for some reason no one subscribes to. It's free. But I've never understood how there are 13,000 people in the group and like 900 subscribers on the YouTube channel. But so essentially what Lawmatics does for me is it automates a ton. I probably get about 30 to 35 new client calls a day, which is honestly pretty insane for family law. I could not process that in-house. So a lot of people say that you should have a receptionist. There's no way a receptionist could process that many calls, because if you're on a phone call with someone for 15 minutes, two other people have called. So they're going to get a call, but there's just no way. So I have an answering service. The answering service gathers the information. It goes into a specific funnel, which is alerted to me. And it probably takes me about 10 seconds or less to scan each prospect and decide whether I do not want them or I do. So I probably immediately decline about 60% of the cases that come in. And I actually used to get complaints about how I declined people. They didn't check their emails. So they would say they hadn't heard from us, even though they got an email. So now they get an email and a text message, and the text messages have resources. So it's really just a one-click button. So if somebody calls and they're an area I don't service and I don't have a referral, it's one click that says decline out of county, and it says here is a link to the Georgia bar where you can find resources for attorneys in your area. It gives them some kind of information other than we can't help you, go away. And that definitely helped a lot. So I've got one-click buttons for referrals to specific people. For example, if it's in a county that I don't practice in and I have a referral source, it's a one-click referral source. And that one click on that button, it does like 5 things at once. It emails the client and says, I'm so sorry I can't help you because you're in this county. It's definitely recommended that you have an attorney that is familiar with your county and your judges. Here's the name of that person. This is their process in terms of when they'll get back to you. It'll send them a text. It'll send them an email with referral information. It sends the referral source the information of the client and the summary that came in when the intake person took the information. So all of that happens simultaneously after me clicking just one button. So that's what I love about it. It makes it very easy to decline, to refer to other people. I do get referral fees because that's allowed in Georgia. I don't know if it is anywhere else, so research that before you do it. So it makes it easier for me to keep track of as well, and it's just one click. So the cases I'm going to keep go into a different funnel where my office manager calls back and gets more information. And at that point, we usually are quoting them and sending them a fee agreement. So the short answer is it compresses that initial intake process into a very small amount of time, because otherwise I would be spending all day on intake. So it saves me a ton of time. So I'm assuming yours is similar. It saves you a ton of time too.
So our record is 4 minutes. Somebody called and said, my doctor told me to call you. They told me this is what the fee agreement would be. Is that correct? We said, yes. They said, great. I'm up. Sign me up.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
it flat out. And literally like my intake person was like, okay, how about first name, last name, phone number, email? Great. Submit. Contracts in your inbox now, sign on. And then, exactly what Regina said, you get all the follow up there. If you turn people down, if you keep people in, you can move people straight automatically to onboarding once they sign the contract and pay the invoice. And now that you're a client, these are the things for mandatory disclosure. These are the most, these are the top 10 most common questions people have. Like all of this can be done based upon the different stages of the case. It's phenomenal.
Right. So the contracts really are very helpful. So you can have a lot of custom fields in Lawmatics. So for my fee contracts, obviously didn't need to know their name. We put their name in. If there's a current case pending, we put in the case number. But the rest of my contract is so encompassing. It basically it encompasses any kind of family law case that it can have. So we just put in the type of case, if it's a modification case or it's contempt. And then since I charge in stages, we just do the initial fee for each stage. If it's the initial phase of a divorce, it's usually 15 to 20,000. We put that in there. We have a mediation fee, and then we usually have a trial fee. So we just put those variables in there, and then it will send a fee agreement to the client immediately. After they sign it, we have another automation that says, we've got your signed fee agreement. If you haven't paid already, here's the link to pay. After they pay, they get another automatic email that says, we're ready to get started within the next 24 hours. We're going to set up your portal. It's going to have this information. It's just, you're basically bombarding them with information. Because usually, the biggest complaint from clients is, I don't hear from my client enough. I don't know what's going on. Nobody says that about us. They know what the heck is going on, and we make it easy for them with all of these automations. So that's why Automatics is kind of awesome.
And it allows you, I know we're talking specifically to the program, but like it also takes that entire client journey and it helps you think about all the different steps. You can build the pipelines on the different stages of the case. You can put things in for all those. And so like it's amazing to me the amount of lawyers that never think about asking their clients for reviews at the end. So you can add that part on. There's the lawyers who are like, oh, a net promoter score. How likely are they to recommend me? Oh my God, I never thought about that. You can build that into some of the different stages. Oh, the turn down stuff. I think that's a huge one. The Florida bar, not the Florida bar, the Florida ethics line has a recommended letter to send to clients from a contingency fee standpoint. So, that goes out automatically with that stuff. And it's very similar to what Regina said. It's amazing to me that this program does those things, but also that it allows you to incorporate all these great ideas that you hear into the same client journey without having to Frankenstein 17,000 different things together.
Right. And clients respond to it as if it's a personal email from me. So I'm sure some people realize it's cans. Some people don't. They respond, hey, thanks so much for this information. And I can see everything. So sometimes I'll jot off, no problem. Let me know if you need anything else. So it's a hybrid of, yes, it's automated, but at any point you can insert yourself into the process to make it a little bit more personal, but it's just kind of a backup. So these things are going out. So they're getting them, what you would consider to be the bare minimum, but it's going to be a lot for them. But you can always do, more on top of that. So that's another reason why I kind of like it. I can jump in at any point. I can, stop an automation. I can send it to a different automation, or I can just send manual stuff out after that. So it's pretty flexible.
And I will tell you, for any automation, the point of automation is to give you the time to be personable with people. Like if you're not spending 20 minutes writing every single contract, if you're not spending 45 minutes a client calling them back 3 other times and following up with and sending these same emails over and over again, you could actually listen to them. You could actually think about their case and the uniqueness of it. You can actually, give them that one extra personalized touch they're truly asking for.
Right. So, a lot of people kind of, when they think about automation, they think about it being impersonal. And, I think at this point, most people expect some sort of automated email. So I don't think that's necessarily a turnoff, but you can make them personal. I mean, you can also say, if there's anything that's not covered in this email that you feel like you need to talk to us about, let us know. So you're really covering all of your bases. You're giving them a lot of information, but you're also offering them the opportunity if there's additional questions or if there's something that they feel like you've left out. Obviously your firm is going to handle those things as well. So we kind of make it clear to our clients at the beginning that we are going to be using these automated systems. We are going to be using a portal, but that is just a mechanism for us to deliver you documents and information. It doesn't replace the personal aspect of, especially what I do, family law. It's very, very personal. It doesn't replace that. It just allows me to have more time to focus on, the actual lawyering instead of, sending you stuff that, I didn't have to have a law degree to do. I can focus on the stuff that I do need a law degree to do.
And as AI gets more and more prevalent, us understanding the flow of everything, the journey, the system is going to allow us to see better where AI jumps in. Like I've got a 50-page SOP for my assistant, and I can paste that in a chat GPT and say, here's a sample email, what should happen with it? And it's like 90% correct on what has to happen. And now like my assistant can actually take that info and tweak it to make it personal without having to look through 50 pages of rules on what to do for different emails. So like there's really cool ways to incorporate these things, but like it all goes back to having that understanding of what you want your client's journey to look like.
And you mentioned this in the book in terms of rules. You're allowed to have your own rules, and you don't have to do it like everyone else is doing it. People thought I literally was insane when I started posting about how we don't accept client phone calls. Like, how can you be a family law attorney and not answer the phone? And my answer is, watch me. And the answer is this. It's not that we're ignoring clients or ignoring their needs. We're not. We're just handling in a way that makes it easier for us and them for us to deal with it. So, if you're calling me on the fly, first of all, there's a good chance I'm going to be busy doing something else. I don't know why you're calling. It's going to take some time for me to look up something to reference so we can have an informed discussion about it. That just really can't happen effectively on the fly. I think that's just kind of my personal opinion. So I don't accept phone calls. It's in the fee agreement. It's in the client portal. They know this. So if they have an issue that they need, they put it in the portal. Hey, I'm having an issue because my husband took me off his life insurance and I wasn't supposed to. So anyone in the firm can immediately see what the issue is, and they know whether or not it's something I need to weigh in on, or if it's something they can respond to. So if it's something administrative, like, hey, we haven't gotten discovery responses, I don't need to respond to that. My staff can look at it and say, oh, they're not due yet, or we gave an extension or whatever. If it's something that requires me, then my staff can let me know, and then I respond to it. And by doing it in the portal, it keeps a log of everything. So there's no confusion about what we talked about. Everything is in writing. It's accessible to the client 24/7, because we've all had those clients where you tell them the same thing 5 times and they forget about it. We can just link them back and just say, hey, remember we talked about this? Here it is. So that's just one of the examples of the rules that I just don't follow, in terms of I have to give my client my cell phone number and I have to be available with phone. Absolutely not. I'm not doing that. This is my process. And the clients that hire me are okay with it.
I also think it's so weird. Like, obviously the client thinks, oh, this is awesome if I can call this attorney and get a hold of them. But if you really think about it, isn't it weird if your attorney's doing nothing, just like waiting around for a phone call? Like they're not doing any work, or they're not busy enough, or like it's just, I don't know.
I was just sitting here watching Netflix. What's up? Like,
yeah,
even if that's the case, which honestly sometimes it is, I think most of my clients just are reasonable people, and they don't expect me to be sitting around. And the way that I phrase it is I make it about them, because honestly, clients don't give a crap about your other clients, and they don't give a crap about what else you have to do. It's about them. And I completely understand it. So what we say is, the reason why we have this policy is, when I am working on your case, when I'm doing deep work, when I'm in trial prep, I don't want to be interrupted by anybody else. I don't want to be interrupted by phone calls from somebody else, by having to put out fires. You don't want me to be interrupted when I am working on your case exclusively, because I have that time blocked out. So that's why we have this policy in place. So then when you're in line for me to do this deep work about your case, that I'm not going to be distracted, and I'm going to be singularly focused on what you need and what you want. And that usually resonates a little better than don't call me because I'm busy.
Well, if I could take one word out of the English language, I'd like to remove busy. I mean, I guess
Busy.
I'd like to remove slurs, but like a legitimate word, like busy, because we have this weird concept, like, oh, how many hours did you bill last year? Oh, I've got all these cases. I'm constantly busy. No, be focused. Like, Regina is not busy. She is focused on that task. She is, you can actually have the framework to do that deep work. You can actually have the time to do what is needed because you're not constantly busy on all these other things.
And just from a mental health standpoint, if I am working myself to the bone and then I have to trial prep, that's not the frame of mind my client wants me to be in. So I'm not. So that's why I kind of try to plan my days. We are beyond proactive in terms of, when we work on our cases and for trial. So I happen to have it, I'm on vacation now, I have a case on Monday. But that's been prepped for weeks. The exhibits have been prepped, the proposed order has been prepped, way in advance. But yeah, kind of stress preparing is usually not in my client's best interest. So that's why I don't feel bad about having time for myself, having free time for myself, taking breaks, not working all the time, because in order for me to be my best self, I need to be fresh and have a fresh mind when I'm thinking about and preparing for their case.
Totally. And I love Dan Pink writes about this in the book When, that for 75% of people, you are more focused in the morning and you're more creative in the afternoon. And so again, that's not everybody. But if you find yourself in those flows, for us, like that's why my EOS level 10 meetings at 9:30. Like it's the first thing. Well, I guess I have a meeting with my assistant before that. But like, so we can be focused on this. If we're doing any brainstorming and talking about marketing campaigns and doing that stuff, we do it after lunch in the afternoon. And then also usually everybody gets to go home early. So like we really try to incorporate not just what we're doing, but when we're doing it in the way to be most impactful to the situation.
Right. And you might be a night owl. There's some people, I don't know these people, but definitely some people that are really productive. Like I know a friend that she's got kids and she's like, after I put them down in bed for 9 p.m., her peak hours are 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Go for it. I'm in bed by
Yeah.
then. If it works for you, great. Then also people think I'm insane because I get up at 4 a.m. and I go into the office and I get things done. So you have to do what works for you. And I think part of designing a firm that fits your life includes your work hours. Like you don't have to work 9 to 5 at all. You don't have to work any of those hours. You can work a part of those hours. And I've put in my email signature that we all work remotely and we all have different working times. We don't expect a response outside of your normal working hours. And, please give us some grace. So we've kind of put everyone on notice up front. We work whenever the heck we feel like it. And it doesn't slow down the case or the process or anything, but everybody's doing what works for their rhythm and what makes them best. And as soon as you can kind of design a firm where people feel empowered to be able to work when they can do their best work, that's going to help too.
Well, I think that's the beauty of an answering service. The company can answer phones 24 hours a day. It's not any individual person sitting there all day long. You've got staggered shifts, multiple shifts, however it breaks down. And I think more people need to incorporate that into their firm and have clients who understand it and agree with it, because it's cool to be able to address, you could be the first person at the courthouse to hand deliver something or whatever it is, just as much as you can get something done at night without everything else going on. It just,
Right.
you got to find the right
E-filing
time.
changed a lot of things. So I was so happy when we finally got e-filing. But yeah, it definitely allows us to work it when we want to. And because we're really kind of put that out there, even with opposing counsel, like don't email me after 12 on Friday. You're not going to get a response until Monday. And most people, understand that. Obviously, if there's some sort of fire, if I got trial on Monday and someone's trying to settle the case, I'm not going to tell them to go F themselves. But in general, people know kind of what our work schedule is, and that when we're off, we're off. But we do have the answering service that answers 24/7. But my Lawmatics is set up to say, after 12 p.m., they'll get a message that says, thank you so much. Here's your next steps. You will get a call from our intake person on Monday, or they've been referred to somebody else. So, even though the answering service is answering, they're still getting automation telling them that, our firm is closed, but they'll just wait for Monday. And for 90% of people, that's fine. The other 10%, I do not care.
Right. It's fine for you. It's
Yeah,
that
it's
it's not
fine.
fine for them.
Yep. So did anybody have any questions specifically about the book or about Jordan's cool lifestyle we're all trying to get to? Oh goodness. Is there a significant difference between Lawmatics and Go High Level? I've not used Go High Level, so what I would have to say is basically hearsay. Have you used Go High Level, Jordan?
Not directly, but we had some clients of the marketing company who did.
Okay.
And like the go high level is nice, and also a lot of more people have used it because they will white label it into other programs. The issue for me is just what I said in the chat. Lawmatics is rolling out new features every 2 weeks, and it continues to move the difference between anything else. I like when I was back at Legalese, we were trying to let them use it. They were trying to let us use it into other industries because like financial advisors don't have a good CRM because accountants don't have a good CRM. Like, Salesforce I think is the gold standard, but you're talking about 20 times the complexity. Yeah, there you go. See, Leadly is a good white label version of Go High Level. Law Hustle, I think maybe they're not
I
anymore. They
used
used to
Law Hustle,
be.
and I think I learned after I stopped using them that they were just a white labeled of Go High Level. So Lawmatics was actually cheaper than Law Hustle. So I want to say Law Hustle was maybe $150 more than what I'm paying for Lawmatics, and they do the exact same thing. So that's why I switched. So I guess I did use Go High Level and didn't know it at the time.
Well, but my problem in that situation though is like unless the company you are using has enough accounts to matter, they're not the one in control of the program. Whereas like Lawmatics controls their own program. And
Right.
so, I think you and I chime in all the time on the Facebook group. There are things that are not perfect, but like they can control changing those, as opposed to if you're a marketing company just white labeled somebody else's product, they're not the developer to make any of those tweaks or changes.
And I found Lawmatics to be pretty responsive. They have a Facebook group and the creator is in it. And somebody will say, hey, I'm having an issue with this. And they'll say, call me, we'll figure it out. Or I want this feature. So there's been times where people have posted, hey, I want this feature, and it's implemented them within a couple of months. So no, no CRM is going to be perfect. It's not. But it's good enough. And my favorite thing to say to myself is sometimes good enough is good enough. And honestly, that's how I operate most of the time because I already know that me at my good enough is pretty freaking good. So I'm okay with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect because if you're looking for the perfect solution, you will go absolutely insane.
There is no perfect solution. And what was perfect today, Chat GPT,
It could
it's not
change.
perfect tomorrow. But you have to take that statement as liberating. You can't take that as soul crushing. You just have to be, okay with good enough or constantly trying to be, 1% better every day is 37 times better over the course of a year. Take that Kaizen concept from the Japanese and Toyota and whatnot and apply that to everything because like you can be tweaking things into oblivion.
Yep. So we did say that somebody that showed up live is going to get a free signed copy of your book. I have absolutely no idea what contest we should do for that. I don't know. Maybe someone could try to guess your favorite movie. I have no idea. The criteria is totally up to
Oh,
you. Like, how do we determine who is going to get a free copy?
interesting. I don't know. We could do a wheel,
What is a wheel?
like spin a wheel, put everybody's names on a digital wheel and spin it,
Oh,
or I
if
don't
you know
know.
how to do that, go for it. I do not.
Yeah, I do. I have a 6-year-old who can't make decisions. So there's a ton of these online.
Honestly, I wish that had been available when I was a kid. I would have loved a wheel of decisions. All right, so we're
I
going
have a
to,
I have a
yeah,
I
sure.
have
Go
a
ahead,
question,
Javel.
but thank you. Forgive me because I'm driving. My question has to do with employees. Obviously, overhead. A lot of overhead tends to be, workers and stuff like that. Do you both use a lot of contract attorneys where you basically pay them just for work they do, or do you have a lot of people on salary?
So I'll go first since he's doing the wheel. I do not use contract attorneys anymore. I used to. So before COVID, we would have status conferences and I hated going because you got to put on pants and drive to the courthouse and basically spend 3 hours of your day for a 15-minute hearing. And I refused to do that. So I would use contract attorneys for that. I have a very small firm. So one of the things I highlight is it is me doing most of the legal stuff. So I really was only using contract attorneys for just kind of minimal hearings, motions hearings. I don't really have to do that anymore because they're all by Zoom. So if it's by Zoom, I could care less where I am. I'll just do it. So I don't personally use contract attorneys anymore because I don't have to. I did, when we were doing in-person stuff and I didn't want to go to. but I just don't have to anymore. And part of that is a function of the smallness of my firm. I only have 40, 45 cases going at a time. So I don't have a stacked calendar. So I have to go to court on Monday. I don't think I've been to court. It's probably been at least a month and a half since the last time I've been to court. So it's not frequent enough for me to really need it. But Jordan's firm is way bigger.
I don't know about that. Anyway, so I'm gonna give you the lawyer answer. It depends. I mean, ultimately, like, what's gonna have more value to you? I personally think that if you're gonna hire a contract lawyer, I think they need to be very specific on a very specific issue or very few hours. Otherwise, I think you're gonna get a lot more value out of a full-time, but you need to make sure you have the process in place to get that value. So like, I would rather hire 2 lawyers and have both of them network half the time and do work half the time and hopefully generate enough business to cover the difference. Because I think if you are in the mindset of sales, like that perspective, you do a better job as a lawyer because you know that it will help you get more cases because you're financially incentivized to do it because, whatnot. As opposed to like, if you're trying to just get this associate to bill 1 million hours or be responsible for a bunch of things, like then that's going to be a lot cheaper than a contract attorney. So you really need to have a very specific situation. So whether that's like for us, anything appellate, that's going out to another firm or we're having somebody do it contract. A lot of times they'll be like the airbag didn't deploy. That's a lawyer that specifically comes in for that on a contract basis or a percentage. There's a couple cases where like there's a recall on a specific tire and there's a specific firm that handles those or a lawyer that's specific to that. So like, it's really these niche-y things where I would recommend it. Otherwise I think you can do it with the understanding that as you grow, you're going to hire a lawyer to replace that contract attorney. And then like, why spend all the time building the relationship to then replace them with somebody else instead of investing in the employee a little bit sooner?
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Anything else? Can I screen share so we know that this isn't rigged?
Yeah.
Okay. Please make sure you are on the wheel. Regina's not on the wheel.
Make sure I'm on the wheel. I'm sorry, but I want your book.
Oh, no
Oh,
problem.
you are. I see your name.
You're on the wheel. All right.
Thank
We
you.
good?
All right, we are
Hearing
spinning.
nothing?
Oh, look at that.
What are the odds? See,
Javelle, you spoke it into existence.
it was not rigged. We all saw it.
Oh my God. Yay. Thank you.
So,
No
Javelle,
problem.
you're driving, so you
Yeah.
can't send us your information, but when you get to where you're going, just send me a message. Either post it in the group or just message me in Facebook, and then or you can message Jordan directly. Either one.
Yeah, I just joined Lawyers on the Beach, and one of my major competitors posted on Lawyers on the Beach that he was looking for a salesperson or an attorney just to do sales. And it prompted me to do a secret shopper on him, and it prompted me to do a lot of things. And so I'm just so grateful for Lawyers on the Beach, and I will reach out to both of you. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
Well, congrats. Does anybody have any other questions? Well, thank you guys for appearing. Thank you, Jordan, for taking the time. I put the link to the book in the chat. It is available on paperback and Kindle if you want to read it. And Jordan's, don't pepper him with 50 million questions, but he's usually an active participant in my group. And then I believe on Maximum Lawyer. And then he's got another group I can't remember the name of. But
That's
yeah,
okay.
He's pretty accessible. If you have questions, just reach out. And thanks you guys for showing up.
I will stop the Netflix show to respond to your message, as Regina mentioned earlier.
All right, everyone have a good rest of your day. All right, take care.